Mic is muted. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Jack the Gidu Hood Sommelier. Long time no see. New season, new brand, new whiskey, new faces. I'm very excited. If you're here, thank you so much for joining. Today we are traveling. What's up? Cheers, Tater. How you doing, brother? We are traveling to Portland. The new buzzword now in the whiskey industry in America now is American single malt. Everybody want to do American single malt. Everybody want to do a version of American single malt, but only a few people are really nailing it down and really, giving it, I would say, proper homage. So I heard of this brand called Bird Creek. Is from Portland. Portland is becoming probably one of my favorite cities now. I just came back from there 2 weeks ago. Amazing. Love the people, love the vibe. But let's save the whiskey stand. To know more about this brand, know more about Bird Creek, I brought in the man, the myth, the legend, the face behind the brand himself, Mr. Mark Stell. I'm going to say it, but I'm sure he's going to correct me. It's Mark Stell. I'm going to say it. Mark, welcome to the show.
You got it right, Stell.
Stell, okay. I had to. I knew I'm going to Stell, but not. Welcome to the show. Welcome. Thank you so much for being
Happy to be here. Yeah.
I appreciate you being here. This is my hood. This is the whiskey hood. This is where we sit together. We talk about whiskeys. We learn about brand. And today we just want to know about you. We want to know about your brand. And hopefully by the end of this, more people will learn about what you do and why do you do it. Mark, without further ado, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? And how long have you been in the industry?
Well, the industry has been short-lived, so 7 years now. We've been making whiskey, our idea of single malt for the last 7 years, but only selling for 2. We're trying to age everything minimum of 3 years, but most of it's 4+. And by design, I come from a coffee background. I own a coffee company here in Portland called Portland Coffee Roasters. I've been doing that almost 30 years. I grow coffee in East Africa. I've got a coffee farm in Tanzania up on Ngorongoro Crater. Been doing that for 17 years. And literally about 15+ years ago, I started getting into single malts and really exploring if something I wanted to do. With my background in coffee, I've been buying coffee all over the world since I started in 1992. So it's over 30 years in coffee. But this is kind of where I thought, let me do some research, kind of identify if this is an area that I think I could compete in. And quickly I understood that it's wide open. What I do and what I think other single malts do I think are a little different. I take a coffee perspective and I've brought it into the whiskey business.
Oh, that is quite interesting. As an African myself, I'm excited to note that you are supporting the Tanzanian economy. African coffee is probably one of the best in the market, even though we have multiple coffees.
The best.
Yeah, definitely one of the best in the market. So yeah, I love that because quite interestingly, people that got into the whiskey industry come from all walks of life, from doctors to scientists to chefs. But I love that you're bringing a new approach into the industry. So let's hear about your approach. Why the name Bird Creek? Because when I heard it, I'm like, okay, I need to know more about this name. It's probably one of the most interesting name in the industry. Why the name?
Creek, yeah. Exactly. So Bird Creek, in the whiskey business, when you're trying to pick a name, it's tough because we compete with wineries and other whiskey brands or alcohol brands. So coming up with the name was a big challenge. I went through 6 and, got my letters from the Scottish Distillery Association saying, hey, you can't use that, or you can't use this. It sounds too Scottish or whatever, anyway, I have a place up in the mountains, a cabin up by this mountain called Mount Adams. It's just across the river from Oregon and Washington, at the base of Mount Adams. And I started, this is my go-to place. It's my weekend place, and really just fell in love with the area. It's where someday I want to do the whole operations there, but it's just a tiny little town. So this place called Trout Lake, and essentially I started looking at names and trying to understand what I was basically trying to do in single malts. I was looking at names that would reflect that. And Bird Creek is actually a place. And on every bottle, I don't know if you can see this, but there is a GPS coordinates on the cap. And that's actually the location of Bird Creek Meadows. And it's a hike. It's my wife and I's favorite hike. It's about 7,000 feet up, and it's the most spectacular hike. It's rare. You can only get there a couple months or a couple weeks out of the year because it's on the Yakima side of the reservation on the mountain, and it's very limited. They had a fire about 15 years ago, so they're really quite protective of this place. So I thought that's really appropriate for what we're doing. From single malts, we're trying to find these super rare barleys and distill them and age them separately and see what they come out as in a few years. So that the name itself really was just we fell upon a name. We fell in love with the name because I think it represents kind of an American feel of what whiskey sounds like. You always hear there's a lot of Creek names, that's for sure, in whiskey. We're not very alone in that category, but yeah. So when we decided to brand ourselves with Bird Creek, we picked something Northwest feel, and so we chose animals and activities around the mountain. So on every bottle, we have different compasses. We have a different compass on every top. So if you see literally our cap, it's quite funny that we have, you have a bird on yours and I have a goat on mine. There's 6 different collector caps, and one's behind me. You can kind of see that. So we kind of this themed area, right? But that's Bird Creek became really out of necessity. We found a name, we liked it, we were lucky enough to trademark it, and the rest is history. And it just so fits that what we're trying to do is a small company trying to break into a space that's been around forever. It's just not been around forever in the States, or focused on in the States, which was refreshing. My take on this industry is where coffee was 30 plus years ago. In coffee, it was all about talking about blends and the roasting companies, and never about origin or about where the product is grown. So like in coffee, like my coffee farm in Tanzania, we grow specific varieties of coffee, and they taste amazing. And we collected varieties from all over the world, and places like, in other places in Ethiopia, like Ethiopia, we collected a geisha varietal, which is the #1 coffee varietal in the world. It's the birthplace of coffee in Ethiopia. So we found these great varieties and planted them in Tanzania. Well, what I'm trying to do with whiskey is the same exact thing, is finding these unbelievably flavorful barleys, distilling them separately, and seeing how the expression comes out. It's a bit of a risk, to be honest, but it's paid off in the first 2 years, like unbelievably. Like we found some really great barleys that are grown in all in the Northwest, or from California to Washington. And we now have 8 different varieties and growing, seems like, every year.
So you just brushed up a little bit on it, but that was my next question is American single malt. You're obviously using 100% malted barley.
Yes.
I'm assuming malted barley.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're now taking this, kind of take on it, or more like, hey, I'm going to use the best barley I can find, and I'm going to bring these flavors together. So let's talk, before we even get to the whiskey itself, let's talk about that process. Are you sourcing barleys, bringing them together, distilling each varietal separately, maturing them separately, and then blending them together? Or is the blending happening at a different process of how the whiskey is made?
So our first goal was, when we started talking about single malt, and even before we found our first batch, was to identify, first of all, is there an area, or does the Northwest have heirloom varietal products like barleys? Do they have heritage, and what type of process, or what type of organizations support this effort? And what we found is that 2 of the best schools in the country for growing and raising barley and creating barleys is Washington State and Oregon State. They're 2 ag schools. So they actually, Oregon State, I think, has one of the best schools in the country, if not the best in the world, raising and creating these new barleys. And they just were a wealth of information. So they basically told us, hey, you need to find these farmers in this area. I have a list. They have a list of everybody. Here's what they're growing. Here's some interesting varietals, and see which malting house is already malting, or if they aren't, if they will malt it. So that was our first go around. Just like in coffee, I was going through brokers and importers to find growers I want to talk to that had interesting varietals. This is identical. It's just in a different industry. So that was the first thing we did, was we identified 2 significant different barley varietals grown from one farmer. So we found one in Washington State and we found one in Oregon. And one was a brand new varietal that the University of Oregon, or Oregon State University, developed. One of their students helped develop it and then took it home after he graduated from school and grows it on his family farm, which is pretty cool. Nice story. And the other is a heritage varietal that's originally from Germany that now grows in Washington State. And this particular grower has an exclusive right to grow it in the States. And that's the Baroness varietal. So it's finding these interesting heritage varietals and interesting barleys that we knew they had already been selling to breweries. So we called some breweries and said, hey, how's this beer? What does it taste like? Is it easy to produce? That kind of thing. And then it really helped us guide us to made the decisions really easy to move forward on picking those barleys for our first whiskeys to try.
So did you bring in a master distiller, or did you take on distilling yourself?
No, we basically hired somebody to help us navigate it for sure. I'm never going to pretend to be an expert in this. I don't think I'll be an expert if I'm in this for the next 20 years, to be honest with you. So I'm always a proponent of hiring and finding people that know what they're doing and do it right from the beginning. I don't want to make mistakes. That's too expensive to make a mistake in a barrel, especially with what we're paying for barleys. These are some of the most expensive barleys on the market, if not the world. And they're super rare, and they should be treated as if you know what you're doing. I mean, we really, and so that, yeah, we without hesitation, we hired people that know what they're doing.
I always tell them, you can do everything. You might as well bring an expert to do it for you. If it's possible, as long as you have the vision and know what you want, obviously there's always someone who can do it for you, which is very smart as a business model. So tell me a little bit about, I'm sure you've been in operation. Tell me a little bit about the distillation process. How are they distilling this thing and this whiskey?
So for us, we have one main goal, and it's not to interfere with what the barley represents, right? So all of our from day one was to basically brew a great beer, pick a malt that will come across in a whiskey. We've had some experience with that, with trying a whole bunch of whiskeys and asking what the malt profile was like, and talking with the malting companies that we deal with. There wasn't a lot of difficult decisions regarding that. But and then when we started picking different varieties, the 2 we picked initially were really easy to brew. So the beer was fairly simple, straightforward. We used an M1 yeast, and everything came out just right. And then when we came to distillation, really we had one goal in mind, which was to not use any hearts or tails, really just the pure hearts, their heads or tails. Just use the main hearts and never to compromise on it. Even if it costs us a little bit of money, we just wanted that barley to come through and shine as it should. So it's been that way ever since. The challenge now is that as we're finding these really funky, interesting barleys, some of them are really tough to brew and work with. We've got barleys like Scott Spare. We've got Purple Egyptian, Franson. We're now we're just brewed the first 4 of our Atlas varietal out of California. I mean, so and every time we do something new, it's a challenge. So we have to really, be on site and expect something different, right? So they weren't as easy as the first 2, especially the Scott Spare and the Purple Egyptian. They were really challenging to work with. But now that we have a program in place, it's easy. So but it took us a little bit. It took a couple of trials of making the beer to really kind of dial it in.
So you're making sure that you're getting fully the hearts to kind of preserve the quality of that, that quote unquote white dog that you're getting before it gets into the barrel. Yeah. So now, I'm assuming each of the varietal that you're are distilling are going in their respective barrels.
Correct. Yeah. So we distill separately. Everything is always done separately. We don't blend before. So we're making the beer separately. We distill separately. We put it in the barrel separately. We age them separately. Everything is done individually. And at the end, if we choose to put two barrels together and call it our small batch, which is what we're having today, it's a simple blend, right? So we're not big enough, to just pick and choose certain barrels. We're saying our blend is going to be this. We'll pick the right barrels, of course, for the blend. Our top barrels go into our single cask varietals, and then a majority of our sales are our small batch because it's just such a nice complement of each other. It's been an interesting time. So we've had these two varietals, and we've had them for the first 2 years, and now we just this year, third year of selling, we just launched two new varietals, and it's one of those things. This has been my goal since the beginning, was to have an awesome tasting experience. Where imagine if you're tasting coffee or whiskey or any type of product, and you can taste origins of these, like a farm direct source, but they all taste different. They all have
that's where the real whiskey nerd get excited, right?
Exactly, and that's me exactly. Because and I feel like my 30 years of blending coffees and buying coffees, this is what I've done forever, and this is where my passion is that, and where I think we're on the precipice of having an amazing experience in whiskey in the next 5 or 6 years because of all the varieties we got coming on. So I gotta kind of go back a few steps, but like in my coffee growing business, I always had one goal in mind. And if you know anything about growing any agricultural products, to me, the top growing region of the world is Bordeaux wines. They've perfected it. They charge $1,000 a bottle. They only take the cream of the crop for their best, right? And it's a specific blend, and they have vetted it. That is, they know what grows well in their climate.
That art.
Exactly. And so coffee has yet to do that. I'm trying to do it on my farm, where I'm trying 10 different varietals on my farm, and then I can pick these coffees to put in a blend that then can go to market. That's an outstanding blend. And we took a farm that was almost non-existent on the map in Tanzania to 11th in the world. Like about 4 years ago, we were ranked 11th out of, just in Colombia alone, there's 500,000 growers. So this was a big deal for us. It put us on the map in Tanzania. It was a big celebration for the whole country of Tanzania, because in the past they haven't had this amazing coffee, and now Parliament's talking about, the president of the country at the time had talked about how amazing this feat was, and that we reintroduced Tanzania to the world. It can be great coffee, right? So that's where I got this idea of trying to do single malts, trying to find what I found in coffee, or what coffee has found in terms of varietals. Before, this is why it's important to really discuss this, because every agricultural product has it. There's unbelievably interesting pear varietals, apples, if you're making certain brandies, right? I don't think anybody's doing it. But if you find the perfect apple or pear or whatever, and it's in your climate, it tastes amazing, it will come through in the expression, right? So I think
people that know what they're tasting will know the difference.
Yeah, exactly. And you see it in bourbons with corn, the same exact principle. If you have a really amazing flavorful corn, it will come through in distillation. So this is what I initially thought.
You are not really far off, because what we've seen actually leading legacy distillery doing now is they're doing single estate grain to glass, even though these people have been distilling forever. It's more like that becomes more mundane and boring. So to bring new expression to the market, I can cite already 3 distilleries that are going specifically by origin, by grain, and by strain to create a new and vibrant product on the market.
Yeah, and one of the research things that I did was I went everywhere. I went to Japan, I went to Kentucky, I went to Scotland, I went to Ireland, and just talked with as many distilleries as I could, and asked them about what the grains used to be like that they would work with. And almost everybody said there used to be this plentiful varietals, and they're not there anymore. All they care about now is how much yield it will produce and what kind of alcohol content I'll get out of it. It's never about flavor. It's rarely about that. It's about how much volume I can get through. A lot of big distilleries, what they have on their side is they can age it because they have, 15 years of barrels in storage and they've got a global supply. Well, when you're small starting out, you can't do that. And so I'm of the belief, and have been on the belief, that garbage in, garbage out, quality in, quality out. It is, if you start with an amazing product that it tastes good, like for example, if it's a feed grade and the cows eat it, it's probably going to taste good because people will like it. If you have a corn that the deer won't even eat it, we shouldn't be eating it. It's kind of funny, but that's how it's how, if you think about it, that basic way, this is why things can taste great within a few years. Doesn't have to wait 10 years. And if you use the right vessel, like new oak, or it'll help it mature a little faster. I want to say faster. It just matures it and flavors it.
I mean, we're in America. It will age faster.
Exactly, right? So there's not a dry, or it's not a damp climate, like in Scotland, where it takes forever to get any flavor out of a used barrel. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, it's got the amazing Scotch, or Irish whiskeys and Japanese whiskey. But there's something different about a single malt that's been aged in a new oak that's maybe only 4 years old. It's just soft and sweet. It just has such a great aroma. And it doesn't need more than that. Once you get into, potentially another year and a half, it might be too oaky already. So this is why when you look and do the research on what we did and what we're trying to do is we're trying to get whiskeys out in 4 years that are phenomenal. And we were lucky the first 2 years. We took first place at Ascot last year for Best American Single Malt. We were up for Whiskey of the Year. We did really well. And this year, ADI, we were best in category, American Single Malt. You just can't, I guess, argue with what we thought we were going to do and what happened, right?
So as we get into more detail of it, I want to get into the whiskey itself. First off, let's talk about this glass. You must be someone who loves art, because I want to know, have you been part of the design of this glass?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You definitely love nature and art, because this glass is impressive. Like, I'm looking at it. It has a whole mountain inside that make it look like it's the glass was so impressive. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Let's give a second to the glass. For me, it's quite interesting. I want to drink in this glass just for the fun of it. So
as you notice, I don't know if you can see that, but in the bottle itself is Mount Adams. So you can see it better than your camera. So that's too. Yeah. So the bottle has Mount Adams in the base, and that's where Bird Creek is, right? So the bottle has Mount Adams, and that was the one thing.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was the one thing when we were designing the bottle was that was a must. I really wanted to showcase a place that I love and that my wife and I really feel is our second home and eventually our retirement home at some point. But it's just that we were lucky enough to have the money to invest in a bottle from the day one. I think people kind of freak out when you're a startup and you got a bottle and a cap like that, and you're doing all these like cool, this case that's coming out in a month. It's like, this is for home bars and tableside service. Like, we're trying to do it right and bring in American.
There's something to be said about design. There's something about the attractiveness of what the eyes buy first, and then the taste bud buys later. Your bottle design is quite particular on its own. For all the people who can see, I'm going to show one of the expressions so you can see. But I actually believe the design of the bottle for me was quite impressive. It's different than anything you find on the shelf. This is an example. It's different. Yeah. You can see the mountain right here, just beautiful mountain right here. And I mean, for me, it's beautiful. It's a really nice design. It stands out on its own. Is quite different than what you see on the market. Then we come to this glass, and for me, I mean, what a perfect gift set to give someone a beautiful glass with a mountain inside. And I mean, it's pretty cool. Yeah. But as we get more into the spirit itself, I pour some so we can actually try and taste. I know that's why most of my people are gonna come to. I have this guy told me I always fast forward to when you tasting the whiskey, so I know if you like it or not. So I would say the nose is quite impressive on this whiskey. As I'm getting on this nose, for me, the nose remind me of a nice marmalade. That's where I feel like it's like a peach and peach raspberry marmalade is fruity, is attractive, a little spritz of lemon zest on the nose. There's very fruity and very sweet, honeycomb like kind of sweetness. When I'm from Africa, when you during honey season, you go and when they get all the bees out, there's this specific smell that honeycomb have, and if you've been around it, it is there. Let's have a sip. This come at 46% ABV, and
Mhm.
it is your the Baroness varietal that you had
I
in
think
this
that's a
one.
small batch. Is that right? Is it small
Yes.
batch? Yeah.
So
So that's
that's
a
a small
blend of
batch.
two. Yeah, that's a blend of two varietals. So it's Baroness and full pint. It's on. Yes, exactly.
Correct.
So
And every one, guys, if you go pick up the bottle and you don't want to know how is it blended, every single one have a description of them on the top. So you can't be confused. You can definitely see. I love the transparency. I love the details that you put in, even
yeah.
the type of cask that is in. But enough about description. Let's see what the whiskey is about. Cheers. Hmm.
I'm gonna wait for you to say something.
Hmm. Immediately, there is an effervescence on the front palate, almost like when you're having some like a Dr. Pepper. Like if you an effervescence, it's really effervescence. It's crispy
Hmm.
immediately when you have it in your mouth. Like that's the first thing before the sweetness, before anything else. It's almost like it gets hold of your tongue right away. Like come here. It's
So to me, that what you're describing is the initial hit of what I consider like half of this blend is the Baroness. That is a palate grabbing, like basically, I'm going to say caramel vanilla-esque. It just coats, but then instantly you're transported to like a stone fruit. Like to me, this is the full pint, and then there's a pause, and then you hit this peppery, like a light pepper finish, and that's also the full pint. And it has this range that when we were looking at these two varieties, we wanted something totally different from each other, but that also complemented when you put them together. And we were lucky. We were really lucky with the blend because, to be honest, when you're trying different varietals and your goal was really to be more about the single malt, single varietal, not so much about the blend because we thought we would get there someday. Um, quite honestly, it was shocking how good it was from the beginning.
Yeah.
And
There's no heat in the taste.
yes,
You remind me of ginger. There's that ginger kind of spice that you get on your tongue. It has a little bit of that sweetness, stone fruit, more of a white, more on that stone fruit side. A little bit of licorice right at the top. By the finish there, you get a little bit of that licorice on the finish. Mid palate. The real big thing on this whiskey is it gets you to salivate. And I know it sounds weird, but you you
oh,
you
that's sweet.
literally
Yeah,
are
yeah, it's the sweet.
salivating.
Yeah,
You want more because of those bright, like citrusy notes and that sweetness that almost I wouldn't even describe it as cherry. It's more. It remind me of a peel of a red apple. Like apple when you peel a red apple and you just take that bite of the skin of it. It gives you that nice skin taste. Um, but it's one of those things where you are salivating, and this look like a Pavlov experiment here. But it's like I want to have more because, and again, what you said about the Baroness, that your tongue is almost immersed with that thing. It doesn't go away right away. Like the finish is short, but your palate is literally kept being tickled and entertained, and you want to salivate and have more. So
This
you
this
you, you did create an environment that is cohesive. That's the best way I would say it.
yeah,
The
and
whiskey is cohesive. Um, the only thing I think is from that pint, that full pint. If you're not used to that herbaceousness that come almost as a licorice, it's gonna
yeah,
throw you off a little bit.
yeah,
But
yeah.
now
No,
that
I agree with that. Yeah,
you explain what that is, now I
yeah,
understand what is happening with those
yeah.
two
And if
varietals.
you try the two separate varietals separately, you'll see one is like extremely mellow, really smooth. That's the Baroness. It's just coats and it's pure caramel vanilla. It's just really easy. The second is the full pint, which is it's like born of spice. It's a this varietal has origins from Ecuador and Chechnya. It's like you couldn't get any more drastically different. But
Correct.
together they have this like fruit with a pepper finish, and
Yeah,
and they're so
if I
radically
had to
different.
describe, I would say you took some apple,
Yeah,
you dusted some cinnamon, put some peppercorn on it, and drizzled it with honey. That's how I will have.
I like
If
that
somebody
expression. I
asks me
like
how this whiskey
yeah,
is, that's my tasting note. Is
perfect.
apple that were this with some cocoa, some cinnamon, with some peppercorn on top of it, and dust with a drizzle of heavy honey with still the comb in there. And for me, that is the scripture of at least the small batch. Um, let's talk a little bit about maturation because you said
Yeah,
it goes in and out. Do you have a rick house? Do you do 53 gallon? Do you do smaller gallon? How are you
we
maturing this
yeah.
whiskey?
Perfect. Yeah, we all of our barrels are Seguin out of Napa. We buy essentially 53 gallons. The first 2 years we were exclusively char number two, which these are all char number two. The reason we were doing that is because we wanted everything to mature similarly in terms of the barrel flavor, because we wanted to see how it would affected each of the varieties as we matured them. So we've now this year this is the 7th year in, and we have a couple of char number ones and char number three, but it's almost it's like we started out well. Why mess with what we think is really good? So most of our barrels are char number two, but we use the best longest aged staves we can get. They're all at least 36-month staves. So it just we're putting it in the right conditions to have the best opportunity to be really good. We're not skimping on anything. So and we're doing two things. So we have the first couple of years we're storing it in a climate that is both hot and cold, and then we bring it into our warehouse here for the last year or two to mature it and it's not total temperature controlled. It's literally for the daytime it is because it's our tasting room, but at night it gets hot here in Portland, it gets cold here in Portland. So it has a little bit of range, but so far it's been working out really well. I mean, I think the whiskey you're trying was in a warehouse in Portland. In addition to we were aging down in Napa for a bit because it was a little hotter. So
Right.
And now we're aging up in Washington State and in Portland here. So but yeah, we're trying to give it some range and get it at least a few years of getting in and out of the oak. So that's been our goal.
All right. Let's talk about different expressions. So we just tried the small batch right here. What other expression do you have right now? What other SKUs you have out right now?
So we have our full pint Baroness. We have our small batch. We also have a Franzen. Franzen is the original, or I think not the original. It's the barley that Pilsner Urquell, the oldest brewery in the world from Czechoslovakia, they use a barley called Franzen. And we found a farmer in Eastern Oregon that grows it. It malts great, and it's gonna be an amazing single malt. We have one barrel for this year. We just put it in a bottle at 3 years, 2 months, and it's going to sell out in a couple weeks. It's only distillery only, unfortunately. But we have, so my goal was, I first started this was to find something interesting and once we get a reputation, to have people start kind of approaching us, say, hey, I've got this interesting barley. So in a year from now, we'll have let me call it Golden Promise, or it's Oregon Promise. Sorry, Oregon Promise. It's a blend of the Golden Promise and Full Pint. So the Full Pint there. So Oregon State created a new varietal. So we contacted the grower and got some of that, and we have some barrels in there. But what I've really been exploring is these stories behind barleys, right? So like the Baroness is an old heritage variety. It's originally from Germany. It was meant for brewing beer 100 years ago. Really flavorful pilsners. Anyway, it makes an amazing single malt. It's so smooth. But we just distilled 2-3 weeks ago an Atlas varietal. And this is when the Spanish came into Southern California and developed basically California 450 years ago. They brought their barley from the Atlas Mountains in Morocco because they controlled Morocco back then, and they basically controlled California. So they brought their barley, and it has been growing in California for 450 years. So I can't remember the university that isolated it, but they've isolated the barley. It is a varietal now that we bring in from Admiral Malting, and it's just an awesome story. But it just had such an amazing smell and aroma after malting. We just like, we think it's going to be great. Again, we just distilled it. It's just got in the barrel. We'll know in a year really how good it's going to be.
What that would be like, yeah.
Yeah. So, but we just launched something, and I got to show you this thing. This is why I think it's so close to coffee. It's almost scary. So in coffee, if you know anything about coffee, 30 years ago, a farmer in Central America, basically because of a disease in the coffee bean, there's something called leaf rust. Their entire coffee farm, except for 2 blocks of coffee, was destroyed from a mold. There's leaf rust in everything, bananas and all kinds of barley, all that kind of stuff. So finding a disease rust product was interesting because Central America at the time was heavy in this. They were losing crop after crop and just devastating these farmers. Well, it turns out what was left over was this varietal that his grandpa brought in from Tanzania like a generation ago. So they went into the research station in Tanzania, picked some geisha varietal, and brought it into Central America. Well, these guys submitted it in competition, and it was in the first time ever a Panama coffee reached any score above 90. To get a 90 or above in coffee is like a unicorn. They don't exist. They're so rare. And recently that geisha just scored 100. The first 100-point coffee in the world was in Panama. So they found this because of an accident, because of disease. But what they found was that this hardy plant was disease resistant and flavorful. Well, that's this. This is the purple Egyptian. This is a 7,000-year-old grain, originally from Ethiopia. It was when the pharaohs were brewing beer 7,000 years ago, they were using this. And basically, that's why the name purple Egyptian. But it's Ethiopia is the birthplace of a bunch of products. Coffee is one of them. And if this is what I think it will be, this could be the geisha of whiskey, in my opinion. That's what I was searching for.
What happened, Mark? I don't have it to actually talk about. What? I don't. Where's my purple Egyptian?
So one barrel of this, and it's like, this is where I love East Africa in particular. I love spices. I love this. If you go,
is already sold.
No, if you go to Zanzibar or you go to the Addis Ababa, there's the Central Market. This whiskey smells like that. It has these unbelievable Northern African.
I know what Addis Ababa market smells like. I know exactly what you mean.
Well, anyway, and I found this thing, and anyway, so the variety is this ancient varietal. It's a hulless barley. It's a black barley that has all these amazing properties. It's a cholesterol reducer. It is as high in antioxidants. As a food grade, it's unbelievably healthy. Well, we had some real big problems distilling it, but this is why, in having these expressions, that I'm so excited about the next 5 to 10 years, because we've got so much stuff coming online, and having the ability to blend. This is amazing by itself, but having the ability to put a little bit of this with a Franzen or another like an ancient grain like Scots Bear or the Atlas I think this is we're we're so excited about where it's going.
You are bringing, it's hard to bring something new, right, to the market. It's hard to bring something new to the market, but
Yeah.
what you're doing now, I mean, I first, you got me intrigued as an African, right? I'm like, my brain is like turning right now. But as a whiskey nerd, right? As a whiskey nerd,
Yeah.
now you got me intrigued because I'm like, okay, now I wonder if you mix X and that, what would that be? I'm really curious to even try these, varietals at cask strength each to see
Yeah.
exactly how they stand on their own.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's gonna turn into a scavenger hunt anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
which is apropos because you're out in the mountains and scavenging around.
Well, and the top
It's
of it is
very,
the
very
compass.
apropos.
And we're searching for, that's the idea of the compass behind this, right? So it's our search. It's our search or quest for a single malt because of the variety of barley,
Correct.
not because of the distiller. This is the difference. So in the US or overseas, you never hear about the farmer. If you go to my website, you see the farms, you meet the farmers through videos because we celebrate them just like I do for coffee, because they're the people that are growing something amazing. And they've held on to these heritage varieties because they mean something to them, maybe their family history or lineage or whatever, or they brought them in because they came in from another country, like the Purple Egyptian. This was a Russian immigrant. They got these barleys from different parts of, there's a whole lineage history of this thing, but it's just really kind of interesting. And for us, they're as big a part of this as the distiller, right? So they're growing something interesting. They care enough about to preserve this varietal. And it's not about, like, I'm not saving any money. We're not an inexpensive product. We're fairly expensive, to be honest with you. This one is another level. But we only do a half bottle because we had 1 barrel for a year. Now I'm producing 10 barrels this year. So it won't be for 4 years, but anyway, you know what I mean? Like, we know it's so good. We just expanded it quite a bit. But for the first year or two, we're like, oh boy, this is going to be a bit of a interesting thing. But then all of a sudden, it just, at 2.5 years, it started, oh, this is getting interesting. This is really coming on, and it's taking to the barrel really, really well. All varieties that we're doing right now, they all have different, I guess the way they, I guess, soak up the flavor from barrels. Baroness is totally different. I think Baroness is a great younger whiskey in the barrel. It's starting to fade a little bit.
From already that first sip that I've had, if that's the impression of it, that's what I'm saying. Like, right now, my main target is, let me find Baroness at cask strength because I really want to know what are, what I would say, the complexity of flavor that it come with, knowing how it attacks immediately your front palate and just give you all that flavor.
What's really interesting, I do a lot of, luckily in Oregon here, we do a lot of markets all over the state where we're able to sell at farmers markets and sell bottles. Like, our state has
nice. That was my next question is, where can people get BIRD CREEK?
Well, nationally at our website, and we basically have 5 different options. We have our cask strengths of Baroness, cask strength full pint. We have our 92 proof Baroness, 92 proof full pint, and our small batch. The small batch is what won double gold at San Francisco this year. It was ADI's best in class. It was our first time we submitted in 2 years a lower proof, because we were submitting our cask strengths exclusively. So it sells really well. I think it's such a great expression. But the first thing is BIRD CREEK. If you're going to buy it outside of Oregon, we're small. We're as boutique as you get here in Oregon. Right. This year we'll sell about 10,000 bottles. That's it.
That's it.
I mean, yeah.
What's the average cost of a bottle?
A 96. So we're at the higher end for single malt, and then our cask strengths are 126. And sadly, it's like, this is it. So we're in 5 years from now, we'll be about 25,000 bottles. So we're adding a bunch of volume, but it's basically what we can afford as we do it, right? So, but yeah, it's and in the first 2 years we had 2 varietals. Now this year we're adding 2 more varietals. Next year we'll have 2 more varietals coming on. So we're adding a lot of expressions, and as we start to add more volume, we'll add more national sales. And currently we can sell in California, Oregon, and Washington to business. We don't sell in California yet, to be honest. I just haven't tried. I mean, I have my distributors. It's all set up. but we're so focused in Oregon and Washington because Washington's right next door here, and we're in the northern part of of Oregon, so it's a little bit easier for us to get up there. But I mean, it's put it
I
this
mean,
way.
you got to have product to send out. I tell
Yeah,
people one of the biggest mistake I see people make is they will open the floodgate and then it becomes rare, and then there's more, YouTubers
yeah,
and product talker like me that will come talk crap about your product versus actually, saying, oh, he's creating scarcity and one. So I like the fact that not only, again, uh, as a reminder for everybody watching now, this is not about Mark. And it is clear that this journey is not about Mark. This
yeah.
journey is about the farmers that are really creating a great grain for him to be able to make this whiskey.
That's
He's not
exactly it.
making it
Yep.
about him. He's not making it even about the whiskey itself. It's about preserving our agriculture and the quality of the amazing grain that can make amazing whiskey. Uh, I really will tell everybody to do just take a minute of your life. We don't necessarily have to buy the bottle, but I would love you to go check out the website, Bird Creek Whiskey. Go see what this is why we do this. We want to hear people's story. We want to hear why is it that they do what they do. And next time you're spending that $100 to get a bottle, you know what you're supporting. It's not Mark, it's not his family, it's not the distillery, but all these farmers that day in and day out are trying to preserve the heritage that we have, which are these amazing grain that eventually will produce amazing whiskey for us. Mark, the last word is yours. What would you want the average consumer to know as
Well,
they look at Bird Creek as a brand?
to be honest, you said it perfectly. I laugh, and honestly, it's if anybody knows me, it's never about me. I don't like ever put my name in. I'm not even on the website. But the reality is it is all about the farmer because we need to celebrate the American farmer and not just the American farmer, but farmers in general. They get a raw deal. We typically want it for cheap and like inexpensive. Everything's got to be really, really price. Well, I'm not in it for price. And to be honest, I'm not for everybody because I'm trying to find something amazing and I'm paying farmers really well. So, and when they have something good, they need to keep it. And the only way to keep it, especially if this is really, these are all small farmers. They're not big conglomerates. And that's where the rubber meets the road when you tell a farmer, hey, you can count on me year in and year out for this much volume and I'm going to grow, and like I just did a tasting event here in Portland. We did Distillers Fest West. And I had 3 farmers in the booth talking about their barleys and helping me pour whiskey. How cool is that? Like they were so jacked that they're like, I've never met any of the people that our product's grown for, like, you know what I mean? Because it's either a food grade or it's cereal or something. But they're like, this is my barley. I'm pouring my whiskey to this person who's buying it from Mark and he's buying it from me. It's what you call an awesome supply chain. So that's my goal. It's always been the goal is to have partners like that care about what I do.
Guys, as you're watching now, we close in. Mark, I want to thank you for just coming and spending some time with me, coming on the Hood Sommelier channel to tell the people your story. I'm fascinated. Now I want to go try your coffee because if this whiskey is that way, I can only imagine what your coffee tastes like. I love East African coffee. So, and when it's done well, so now I'm gonna hound you in the next 2 hours to find your coffee so I can have it. But for now, if you're here either on Facebook, on Instagram, or on YouTube, make sure you actually check out Bird Creek. They're here. They are here to stay. They're here to support our farmers, our economy, and make sure that we are doing what we need to do. This again is not about Mark. If you go and buy a bottle of Bird Creek, you are supporting farmers, and they, like he said, can use all our help. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for watching. We appreciate every single one of you, and we'll see you on the next stream. Mark,
Thanks,
thank
Jack.
you so much, and cheers, everyone.